All right, we are live. Hey guys, welcome to my channel. K Fits My Life. Um, I really am super excited about the person that I'm talking with today. Um, we'll get into the whole story of what the conversation me and this person had, but this woman literally changed the entire course of my life. Um, and we worked together a long time ago at Comcast,
Oh,
and
jeez.
she and she is a life coach, um, and her name is Tanyell Cole. So, guys, please welcome Tanyell to the channel. Hey, Tanyell.
Hi, guys. Tanya.
So there's so much we can talk about, but we don't have too much time. She's a very busy person, but if you could, Tanyell, before we get into how you helped me and what our conversations that happened, can you just tell a little bit about yourself and what you did as a life coach and how that whole thing started?
So my goodness, I can go on and on. I have my background is marriage and family therapy. So I went to school to study psychology. And then I realized that psychology focused a lot on your past and kind of mental disorders and things that you necessarily can't change. You can't change your past. You get stuck there. You can't change it. And people just tend to just want to focus on the past. So I didn't really like that. And I thought there's got to be something else out there to help people be able to move forward, achieve the things they want to achieve. And so I kind of stumbled across life coaching. I love Ian Levanzette, always have since I was like 15 years old, but didn't necessarily know that that's what she was or what she did. Um, but I through her, I kind of stumbled across life coaching, and so I was kind of like, "What is this thing?" Started studying it more, learning more, and decided to go to school for that. So, what drove me towards life coaching is that they focus on the present and talk about the future. So, it's where you are now and where you're trying to go.
What
Yeah.
what do you think? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What do you think is from the people that you've talked to is one of the biggest things that keeps people from moving forward with their lives?
I think now, presently, I my views have changed on that, and I think what really prevents people from moving forward is society, their social circle, who they surround themselves with, their family, other people's thoughts. It's like um, the fear of what will someone else think. I really think
Mm,
that is the big
mm,
thing of what
mm.
stops people from moving forward. I used to think it was being kind of stuck in the past, but as I've done this more and more and talked to more and more people, that well, my mom or my dad or my spouse or my kids or the money or the world all tends to be a reoccurring thing. So
So what do you say to someone to help them get past that? I mean, how do you help change someone's perspective enough to no longer be hampered by the thoughts of others?
So I started my type of coaching. It's called snob coaching, which is so non-traditional, organically bold. That's the acronym for snob. And so when people think of snob, they think of that person that thinks that they're better than other people.
Mhm.
Um, and I think we can actually take some pros from snobs in a way. If we start to think non-traditional and we be our organic self and then we're bold about it, you somewhat kind of become a snob. So in other words, you're not thinking about what other people think, you're thinking about yourself, you're putting yourself first, and you are doing what's best for you. So I don't know if that answers your question. So for me, my
Yeah,
goal
it
is to
does.
tell people this isn't about your mom. Your mom has lived their life. They made their choices. And you almost have to think that, not that you're better than your mom, but your happiness is. Me
Mhm.
being happy is way more important um, than anything else.
It's almost like I was listening to another conversation, and these persons were saying that being selfish is not necessarily a bad thing sometimes, because sometimes you have to be selfish in order to be able to be selfless in order to
Hmm.
help somebody else. So it seems like what you're saying is that you kind of have to put the oxygen mask on yourself first before you
Absolutely.
help somebody else.
Yep.
So um, I'll just share a little bit of what Tanyell did or said that actually helped me. And I've never forgotten this conversation, but we were working together at Comcast and we were sitting in the same cubicle. And Tanyell asked me what I wanted to do with my life. What did I want to do? And I went into this super long tirade about being a choreographer. And I remember Tanyell just sat. She didn't say anything. She just sat and listened the whole time I was going into this long. She just looked at me and said, "You know what? Out of every conversation we've ever had, you hadn't looked as happy as you did when you were telling me what you wanted to do with your life." And then she asked me, "So why aren't you doing that?" And then she also asked me if I wasn't afraid of what would happen or what people would think or about money, what would you be doing with your life right now? And those questions literally made me think so hard, because I knew what I was doing at that time wasn't what I really wanted to do. It was what I felt that everybody around me thought
Hmm.
that I should be doing, just
Right.
like you said. And so I was doing that, and I was never happy. Do you do you feel that, is that something that has happened with people that you talk to? Is that a cycle that you said? I know you said it earlier that that is something that happens, but for the most part, do you feel that people are just going through life and not able to do the things they want to do because of just one, not knowing what they really want to do, and two, not having enough confidence in themselves to really just step out and say, I'm going to try this?
I think the first question, people usually know what they want to do. They're just afraid to say it. So
Mm,
I don't know what I really want to do, but deep down inside, they know what they really want to do. And I think the confidence, yes, and the lack of confidence comes from what other people have put into them.
mm. If you had one thing that, well, it may not, you may not even be able to be brought down into one thing, but if there was something that you could say to someone that you knew was having an issue trying to figure out what they wanted to do, especially like in my channel, a lot of people who were XJWs, they leave the organization, they don't know what they want to do with their lives. When you see someone that is completely lost almost as to what they want to do with their lives, what are one of the first things that you say to or ask that person?
Before you became an adult, before you started worrying about the bills, the money, the kids, religion, all those things, what was it that made you happy? Like, what was it that you were doing when you used to be in your quiet moments, dreaming about what you would look like as an adult or what 5 years would look like? What were those dreams? So that's usually what I ask them.
And you think it has a root that reaches that far back into a person's past for them to know what it is they want to do?
Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of people. You look at little kids and they dream without boundaries.
Mm,
And so they will say things that we as adults, I'm doing my little kind of look at and think, you that's not gonna happen. Or, keep dreaming, baby. And that starts to like kill, as they get older, that begins to like dim those dreams, and eventually they forget that they even had, then you got to pay your college tuition, you got to do this, so you start hustling and you forget. So I think for some people, yeah, you absolutely have to go way back and think like, what was it in my, childhood? What was it that I was doing that just made me happy?
Wow. That is such a powerful statement. I never really thought about it like that. I knew probably at 11 or 12 what I wanted to do, but my parents told me I would never be able to do it. And so
Hmm.
that was one of the reasons why I didn't do it until I was like 25, 26 when I actually started trying to do it. So yeah, you're right. A lot of times you do forget that you have the ability to do something other than what society says you should be doing with your life. How did was there ever a time when you were unsure of what you wanted to do, and how did you get to a point where you knew what you wanted to do?
Um, that is crazy. Oh, that's a hard question. So, for me, I think I knew I wanted to be a mother. Like, I absolutely knew I wanted to be a mother. And which is odd. That's not a career or dream, but I knew I wanted to be a mother, and so I have 10 kids now. But I knew I
Wait,
wanted
what? Wait. Whoa, wait a
now that
minute.
kind of happened, since I left Comcast.
10. Wait a minute. I remember you saying you wanted to adopt kids. Did you adopt kids?
I did. I adopted four.
Okay. And you and
So,
your husband have how many together?
so we have six together.
Wow, y'all have been putting in some work. So you
Uh,
have 10 kids. Oh my God.
so I knew I wanted to be a mother, but aside of that, I also knew that I wanted to help people. Like for me, my dream was if I could change one person's life outside of my kids, then I've done my job. So that was like always my dream. But my parents or my family never really said you can't do that. It was more so like empowerment for women. Like you don't depend on a man, so don't have all those kids because you can't depend on a man. You need to be working. You need to be making your own money. You need to and so I went to college because I thought, I mean, that was like you have to go to college so that you can make some money so that you don't depend on anybody.
Did you
Um
want to go to college?
I don't think when I look back, I think I didn't need to go to college.
Hmm.
So I wanted to go, but not necessarily. I wanted to major in public speaking because I felt like that was an avenue to what I wanted to do. But it was, you can't make money public speaking. So you need to do something else. So psychology was like the next best thing. So I don't know if that answers your question. I mean, I always knew, but my family was kind of like, you need to be self driven. And it wasn't until I graduated from college and my grandmother passed away, and I look back on all the conversations we had and the life that she lived that wasn't her best life, like her just sharing with me all her wishes, things she wished she could have done. And I realized at that moment, like, you know what? I'm not gonna be laying on my deathbed and telling my kids what I should have, would have, could have done. Like I want them to see me happy, regardless to if that doesn't make my dad happy. So that was my life changing moment.
I remember you sharing that with me. That was something else that you said to me, that you would have to, sometimes you're going to have to do things that may make other people unhappy in
Mm-hmm.
order for you to be happy. And that stuck with me too, because leaving the organization, now I haven't spoken to my parents in close to 10 years.
Wow. Wow.
And it was because I knew they were about to shun me. And I wrote them letters and told them, they had already started shunning me. And I told them, I'm happy for you guys, but I'm no longer going to be a part of this family, because they were they were doing things that was making me feel bad, but then they would go off and be okay.
Right.
And
Right.
after a while, I was like, you know what? That's really unfair to me to allow them to make me feel bad and then they be happy. So I'm just going to have to sever this relationship. And I think that's one thing that people don't realize, like you were saying earlier. sometimes you have to be strong enough to sever ties with people that you may not necessarily want to sever ties with, but they're not good for you at that moment.
Right.
And is that something that you have to help people to see as a life coach, that, there may be people in your life that you need to cut loose? And how would you help someone to get to that point?
All the time. All the time. So the funny thing is the new thing going around now is Will Smith's, you have to make yourself happy. You can't depend on other people to make you happy, right? And so just had a conversation with someone about this, and she's in a rather unhealthy relationship. But for her, she took that as, well, I just need to focus on me and making me happy, and he just, whatever he's doing shouldn't affect me. And I said to her, yes, you make yourself happy, but other people can make you unhappy. It's like people, I think they misconstrued that message. It's like you're responsible for your happiness. And so if somebody else is making you unhappy, then they are, you're responsible for your happiness. So you need to cut that person out of your life. You can't just, that's like false happiness, you know. You're with this person every day and they're doing things to make you unhappy. People can do that. That's possible. It's
I
real.
think a lot of times the most unhappy people are the ones that have the ability to make other people the most unhappy.
Right.
And sometimes you can't look at a person and just tell that they're unhappy. You know, I even had, and I literally had to separate myself from my entire family. My aunt was my favorite relative in the world, and I think she got to a point where deep down she was really unhappy, and she would do things, whether intentionally or unintentionally, to sabotage my happiness. And I say whether intentionally or unintentionally because I believe that people can intentionally do things to make you unhappy,
Mm.
and people can also unintentionally do things to make you unhappy because they are unhappy.
Right.
And it got to a point where I had to say, you know what, I really can't be around her right now because she is in a place that if I stay in that place with her, I'm going to be just as unhappy as I think she is.
Right. Absolutely.
So have you ever had a situation where you had to tell someone that, like, a family member, someone that they love, someone that they have all this lifelong time with, maybe somebody that they have to cut loose?
That would be my husband, with his
Really?
mother.
Okay.
So actually his family in general, but it was more so his mother and his father.
How did he receive that information?
Like most people, you know, you don't know her, you don't know what you're talking about. It wasn't until we lost our child that he saw just how toxic they were. A
Mm,
lot of people, you could tell them all day, but until they see it for themselves or experience the hurt, um, they just can't. It's almost like you're trying. I have this in my head. I don't know how to say it verbally. I think as people in society, we are so used to being miserable that when somebody try to tell us we're miserable, we almost think they're trying to make us miserable. I don't know if that makes sense,
mm, that makes a
but
lot of sense.
we walk around in this world just miserable. So we think it's normal. It's like we think the way we feel is normal. So when you have somebody come into your life and say, "Hey, that's not normal," then we think they're the problem.
Hmm. Hmm.
So,
It's a phrase that someone said. I can't remember the person that said it, but they said being being well adjusted in a sick world is not a good sign. It's a sign of sickness.
right.
So
Yes.
if you if you and
Yes.
like you said, most people walk around miserable, but they're so used to being miserable that they think that's the norm.
Exactly.
So and I don't want to get too, you know, personal into your business, but once you were able to help him see that, how did that information, how did you see a change in him once he started to actually realize what you were saying?
The freedom of life for him. So he recently quit his 9 to 5. He had been there for 13 years. So that was all. I mean, that was what he knew. And he was climbing that ladder. So he was at the time a regional manager. Um, so because that's what you do, right? You get a good job, you climb the ladder, and all of that was him seeking that approval from his parents. He wanted to hear them say, "Good job, son. You did it. You made it." But it was never ever enough. Well, now I'm a supervisor. Oh, well, you're not a manager. Well, now I'm a manager. And so anyway, to make this story short, once he cut that relationship off, he was able to kind of see like, okay, what is it that I really want to do with my life? Like, I'm not really happy. I thought wearing a suit and tie was making me happy, and now I realize that it's not. It's really like weighing my spirit down. I'm about to be 40, and what have I done? Like, really,
Mm.
what have I done? And so he made that leap and quit, you know, and cashed out his savings. I mean, he took all his savings and he said, "I'm gonna start a business." And so even though he slowly started having communication with his family again. And it's so funny how just you still see that toxicness of them, because it's like, oh, you're gonna cash in your savings. Well, you have kids. Well, you have this. You have, that just that pushback. But because he had that time away from them, it helped him kind of stand strong in that. And so now that, he has this successful business that I support him 100% in, and just free. It's almost like a sense of freedom, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. How has seeing that change in him made you feel about being someone that actually helped him to see that? How did that make you feel? That's a great thing to do. I can only imagine like seeing someone actually that you help to see some. It's easy for people outside of your situation to see your situation. It's harder
Mhm.
for with me. It was a long time. I would never just admit that my mother and father were, not to say, not to be mean, but I will say ignorant in the sense of just not knowing things and the actual meaning of the word ignorant.
Right.
Admitting that they were just ignorant people about a lot of things. It took a lot for me to get to the point where I can just say, my parents were very ignorant about a lot of things.
Mm-hmm. That's that
Um,
old school kind of. His parents are super religious. They're
right,
older. It's just a
right,
different. I don't think they were malicious. It's just a
hmm,
different, different time for them.
right, right. So how does it help you? How does it make you feel now to see him get to the point that he is now?
So twofold, right? Because I talked about the misery, how we walk around miserable.
Hmm.
I am not immune to that. So I will say that it initially was hard because I have been with him and saw him in the corporate world for so long. So to see him changing into this person, even though we talked about it and I knew, it was kind of scary for me, because I'm like, wait a minute. You changing, like, are you realizing it? It was almost like, are you going to realize that this wasn't the life you wanted? Like, you got married because your parents said get married, so it was scary for me at first.
Mm.
Almost like, I unleashed a beast, you know just being honest.
Right. No. Right. Right. So
um
twofold.
yeah, the other side of that was, once I was able to get up, that was my own personal internal fears.
Hmm.
Once I was able to get past that, it brought us to another place of a different type of happiness, a different type of, the conversations we're able to have now go beyond society. It's deeper. It's about what's inside of us. Like, we're able to be vulnerable with each other more, because I think before we kind of stayed surfacey.
Hmm.
He didn't want me to see his fears because men don't show fear. They go to work, they work a 9 to 5, they take care of their family. Whereas now he's able to show his fears and know that I'm not going to judge him. And for me, that makes me feel closer to him. So I don't know if that makes sense. It was like a process. So where we are now, it's like, wow, seeing him fully happy, fully vulnerable, not worried about um well, my mom or my dad or society, because friends judge us every day, all day too. Who quits their job and starts a business with kids? Who does that?
Right.
Um, so, but that has made us stronger because now we have to depend on each other because we
Mm.
have to support each other. If that, I don't know. I hope that answered the question.
What? Yeah. Stop. You, girl, you perfect. You're great. What part? How big a part do you think our fears play in us either moving forward, becoming better, or not just our fears, but acknowledging our fears plays in us um, getting to the point or to the place that we're trying to get to in life?
Huge.
Hmm.
The fears are huge. I mean, they are our biggest issue. Our fears, of course, and it's the fear of failure
Hmm.
and the fear of success. Because with success comes responsibility.
Possibility.
And I
Hmm.
think a lot of us are more so afraid of, what if this works? How will my life change? And so again, that walking around in day-to-day misery, and now there's this possibility that you can be on the other side of the coin, is scary. That's scary.
You you told me something, another friend, and I say it all the time. I don't think you realize the impact you had on my life. And I say every year when her birthday pops up, I always say happy birthday to the woman who changed my life forever. Um, but she told me, she said, Keith, you can't be afraid to fly. And that's the thing. And I've said that to so many people because most of us are always afraid that if we take that leap, we're gonna fall. But what if
Mm-hmm.
you take that leap and you fly? I mean, how is that gonna make you feel to know that you took a leap and now you're flying, you're not
Right.
falling? And I think that is huge. That feel, like you said, is something that keeps us from trying to do anything that is outside of the norm.
Outside of the box is what I like to say.
Exactly, exactly. So what do you how do you feel like having been a life coach and you see the change in people, you see the impact that you've had on people? Do you follow up with them later to see how they're doing, and do they call you or talk to you later and say, hey, Tanyell, I'm doing such 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 and such, and or I'm not doing? Do you help them to be accountable to the things that they said that they're going to do, or how does it work as an ongoing process?
I would love that. So usually once we're not clients, once we don't have that client relationship anymore, I lose touch with a lot of them.
Hmm.
I have had there's been it's so amazing how the universe works, right? I love the universe and how it works. There have been times where I have felt um and thought about people like, oh, did I worry, just kind of worrying. And I will get an email from a past client that will say, oh my God, this is where I am in my life. I just want to tell you how much you've changed my life. Because I deal with a lot of relationships. That's a lot of what I deal with. And so, especially for those women who have walked away, and so I worry about that. She left, how's she doing, was that the right decision? And I'll get those emails that say, I'm so happy now, and I've found a man that treats me the way I needed to be treated, and I'm in a place that I never thought that I could be in. So every now and then I'll get those follow-up emails that are just, they make me feel like, okay, okay, the universe, this is what I'm in the right place, I'm in the right place. So
How important do you think it is for people to? Well, this is maybe a two-part question. One, how important do you think it is for people to be able to be aware of their own issues and start to work on their issues before they jump into a relationship? And
Oh,
Part two, and part two, what factor do you think being in a relationship has played in your client's happiness and their unhappiness?
that first question, that's a whole nother session. That's
Okay.
a whole nother like
Okay.
I feel like people need to like be whole. You need two whole people to come together for it
Mhm,
to work.
mhm,
That's just I just really feel that you have to be your I say organic. People say authentic. I like to say your organic self,
mhm,
meaning you can't have all these pesticides, which is all the stuff coming from the world, all these unhealthy things coming into your life. You're not organic. You're something else. So you have to be your organic self first, I
mhm,
feel,
mhm,
before you can dive into a relationship. Because going into your second part of your question, a person that is fully organic is not going to allow their spouse to deter them from their path of happiness. They're just
mm.
not going to do that. They're not going to allow anything that is toxic or unhealthy to waver them. So
Good
I
point.
think relationships, you get married or you get in a relationship and you no longer pursue your dream because you might move because your spouse moves, or you have kids and now society tells you that you're a mother so you have to do this, or as a man you have to provide. And so how do you provide? Well, you get this type of job to provide. You can't be an artist and have a wife and kids to to take care of, so you
Right.
deviate from your dream. um and so
I
relationships can do that.
I I bring up, I'm glad you touched on relationships because again, a big part of my audience right now are people who have left this organization, and like it or not, if you're in an organization for 25 years, like I was, you are in a relationship with
Hmm.
that organization, flat out. And a lot of these people, including myself, either divert their entire life choices because of their relationship with this organization. They don't pursue their dreams, like you just said, because of this organization. They don't do the things that they've always wanted to do with their lives because of the relationship they have with this organization. So even though it's not a one person organization, it's still a relationship where their choices are the result of the relationship that they are in. So if you were talking to someone who was in a relationship that was an unhealthy relationship with that person, what would be one of the things that you would say to or ask that person to help them see the unhealthy nature of the relationship that they were in?
Are we talking about from a organization standpoint? Because I have a different view on that type of relationship.
Go with that one.
Okay. When I talk to someone that is in a religious relationship with any kind of religion, any kind of organization, and they have stopped growing or they're not happy, you said with a lot of people, I say that relationship is still one on one because they feel like they're in a relationship with God.
Mm,
That's what they think. And so I then say to them, so you're in an abusive relationship, because the way you're explaining your God or this guy to me is he don't want you to be happy. He's controlling. He's abusive, because if you make the wrong decision, you're gonna get chastised, whether it's verbally, physically, mentally. Like, this God is an abusive partner.
hmm
That is almost how I say that to them. I think people don't look at it like that. And so I correlate that kind of relationship with a real life relationship. If you were with a man who told you how to dress, how to walk, how to talk, who you could talk to, who you can't talk to, what you can celebrate, what you can't celebrate, what you can eat. And if you did do any of those things, this man was going to punish you so badly that you may not, I mean, to the point where If you die, you're still being punished about this decision. Are
Wow.
you telling me that you would still walk hand in hand with this man? Like, what joy are you getting from this relationship? Let's talk about that for a second, because right now what I'm hearing is an abusive relationship. I'm not hearing any joy.
That was a very very good metaphor. The way that was perfect. So what has been the response? And I know you say you may have to go. I don't want to keep you. Maybe we can do a part two of this video.
Okay.
Uh, um, what is the response that you usually get from someone when you make, because that is not something that the average person thinks of. Like
Mm-hmm.
I think about what I talk about a lot, and I just started equating it with a relationship when I was talking to you just now. So I know that there's not a lot of people who actually think of it in those terms. What is the response that you usually get from people when you break that analogy down like that?
So I get a lot of, but my God is a loving God. And I get that a lot. He's loving. He wants the best for me. Um, there I know that if I walk this life, there's a better life for me. I get that response a lot. My rebuttal to that is, tell me how he's a loving God. Show me. Like, you've told me all of what you can't. Now tell me how he's a loving God. And then my second response to that is, so your happiness again in this life, he doesn't care about that part. He's saying be miserable until you die. And you're not quite sure what will happen. So I then correlate. So if this man you're with says, while you're with me, you won't do anything, but when you die, then you could be happy. You would go with that. You would stay with that, and you would believe that. That type of thing when you start asking people, show me how he's a loving God, and they have to think about it. Is usually when they say, okay, well, but what happens is, but my family, that's when family, my church members, that's when those things start coming up. My childhood. Okay, so now we're not talking about this relationship with God anymore. It's really about your upbringing and your family and your church members and this routine. So you're staying with this man because everybody else is telling you he's good for you and you should be with him and this is what you do. But behind closed doors, he is the most abusive person you have ever been with. So,
Well, you know what? I think Tanyell, because you have just opened a litany of doors
I'm
with
sorry.
that
I'm
statement.
sorry.
No, 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 no. I'm glad you did, because that will allow us to have a conversation about how going forward with, after you talk to someone like that, what were the next things that you've done to help a person. So it's already after one, and I don't want to keep you too long. So guys, um, this has been an amazing conversation, and I'm so happy that Tanyell was able to come and talk today. So we will set up a part two of this conversation, because we actually have gotten to the part where I think most of the people who watch this channel right now are like, this is what I'm talking about. And so we may leave them on a bit of a cliffhanger, but come back, guys, and I promise you, Tanyell will be able to get back with us, and we'll be able to finish this conversation. So, Tanyell, thank you so much for
Thank
spending some
you.
time today. I really appreciate it. And hang on after I end the chat, and we'll wrap up and figure out when we're going to do part two. But
Okay.
guys, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you guys on part two. All right. Thanks again, Tanyell.
Thank you.